Good morning, everyone. It's it's a little after 4 o'clock in the morning here, and sitting out on my deck with a fire and the lights on, and probably would get some tongues a swinging here in the neighborhood. So I figured, well, if I'm working, maybe that legitimizes me being up at a weird hour. But I'm a nurse that works midnight, so weird is all relative. So something I've seen, at least it's hit my consciousness recently, was that I was at the IONS annual conference in Phoenix, and if you're not, you should be aware. IONS, International Association for Near-Death Studies. One of the things I saw in people who were in the healing area was I was seeing a phrase called trauma informed. And I've gotten mixed feelings on that. Just because you've experienced trauma doesn't necessarily mean that you are suited to assist others to work through their trauma. There is some data out there, as well as some personal experiential information on my part, that just meeting someone who has been through what you've been through and having that kinship is very helpful in your healing process, especially when it's something that's what I would call an exceptional human experience. So the near-death experience, out-of-body experience, spiritually transformative experience, any other kind of epiphany, satori, anything that pulls you out of your normal vanilla life and exposes you to a much larger reality. Terence McKenna had a really interesting quote, at least it's attributed to him on the internet, so of course it must be real. But allegedly he said there are two types of people in the world, those who have experienced ketamine and those who have not. And I think that having been one of those people exposed to it repeatedly, it is very close to a near-death experience or satori. It's one of those exceptional human experiences in that you as an individual kind of melts away, and you have an awareness that comes on at the same time of being part of a larger system and realizing that oneness that people talk about or sell books with is actually a real thing. So my own mother had some mental health issues, and she had a friend who she confided in, and this person also had mental health issues. So one could help the other, and I'll put some little air quotes around help. But what was really going on was that they were enabling each other. So just because someone is quote unquote trauma informed, there is a benefit to that, but its scope is very limited unless that person has other things, in their toolbox to help them with that. So with that being said, one of the things that I've not heard a lot of people talk about within the near-death paradigm, and again, the paradigm is you die, you come back, you write a book, you talk about it, and it has a sing-song, cadence coming out of me because it happens so frequently now that it's almost cliche, and that's okay. But my personal feeling is, if you're going to say something new, say something different. personally, I went through the tunnel. I saw a bright light. I saw another bright light. I connected with an entity of supreme intellect. I was given a little bit of, a life review. Was told I had to come back based upon an agreement I made prior to being born, which I begrudgingly agreed to, and then went through about 9 years of trying to reassimilate into this world. In many ways, over there felt like being released from prison and then having to go back into prison. Having access to unlimited knowledge and wisdom, because there's a difference, to come back here and to be diminished again. That's a big deal. And I think that has to do a lot with the time it takes to kind of reassimilate. The other thing too is that this world is very much focused on materialism, commercialism, and a lot of people who come back from the near-death experience or any of those other exceptional human experience I previously mentioned, they don't want to buy into it, but it is the world that you live in. Reminds me of the Three Amigos movie where I think it was Chevy Chase's character. They're deep in old Mexico, and Chevy Chase is, do you have anything else other than Mexican food? So when in Rome, do as the Romans. Well, you're back on Earth, and I think part of the reassimilation is I referred to it, still do a little bit, but I referred to it for a long time as re-entry turbulence, and of course borrowing from space and exploration, whatever, coming back into Earth, being diminished, having all of this woo-woo knowledge, and then trying to explain it to others who can't grab it, to try to live a different way than you did previously. People don't understand. And then to try to reconcile that cognitive dissonance between I know what humans are capable of in a good way, because when you're over there, you see the potential. You see what humanity can be if it operates at its highest, greatest good at optimal levels. We don't do that. And some of it, I think, is nature, and some of it is nurture, in the sense that some people are more kind or altruistic than others. But I also think it has to do a great deal with how you were raised, where you were raised, and what type of reality smorgasbord you've been sampling. If all I did was live on MSNBC, I would have a very skewed version of the world. If all I did was consume Fox News, then same thing. I'd have a very skewed version of the world. And so I think a lot of the dissonance comes from you see this potential, and you also can't abide by hypocrisy. And so you want to live your highest and greatest good, your highest potential, but you're surrounded by a bunch of schmucks who won't let you do it. And that's the challenge. That's the game. If you play a video game and you've got, all the cheat codes on your character and all the weapons on the easiest level, sure, you'll slay through that game and have, the top score. But did you enjoy it? Did you really get everything out of it that you wanted? It's the challenge that makes it worthwhile. And sometimes you need to walk away from the game and take a break. And that's the difference, is that, sorry, just recovering from COVID. But that's the challenge, in that you can't walk away from life. You can't take a timeout. Whereas, you can hit the pause button and go away from the game, or you can put the game away for a couple of days, weeks, whatever, and always come back to it later. You can't do that here. So that's one of the reasons why I'm not sleeping right now, is that I work at a job, I'm in nursing, and I'm at a specialty hospital where the primary diagnosis are kids with eating disorders. But they have multiple diagnoses, and I would say maybe, if I've got 30 kids on the floor, I'd say maybe 10 of them are actively wrestling with the thoughts of self-harm. And it can be anything from, scratching and cutting themselves with whatever they can find to, actively trying to kill themselves with, whatever they have on hand. And that's part of the therapeutic dynamic. We all are aware of that. We all try to address it. But what I've noticed in this hospital is what I've noticed in my time as a nurse. And I'm a weird cat. I've been in clinical IT, I've been in clinical on the floor, and I've also been in clinical research. So similar but different. But one thing I've noticed, that in a hospital setting, there is a push-pull between the patient-facing staff, who in my mind, they have this innate desire to care for others, which I believe the proper term for that is caritas. You just care for people. It's just your nature. And you don't really care about the profit margin. You don't care about what is the most efficacious and would save the most money. So I believe there has to be a management side to that coin, where the caritas maybe is diminished and maybe is not present at all. And so they are watching the bottom line, because in the end, this is a materialistic world, and we need to survive in that materialistic world. And you can't just give away your product for free, otherwise you won't be able to do that anymore. So there needs to be a balance. But that Sturm und Drang is, it hasn't been winning, and it hasn't been balanced in a very long time. And what I'm seeing now also happened with a bunch of other frontline workers during COVID, is, when the world was falling and people had a chance to step outside their own comic opera, they realized that certain people that they may not have even seen previously are actually enabling their lives to continue. That mailman, that cashier, that janitor, that nurse. There's a bunch of professions out there which some are more visible than others. But, we're so caught up in our own comic opera and trying to pay the bills and just live a good life that we don't often see that. So in a way, I guess maybe COVID was good in the sense that it caused everyone to pause the game, step back from it from a little bit, and reevaluate what's important. But what I'm seeing now is there is a challenge between management, who is trying to maximize profits, and the frontline staff with their caritas. And what they're doing is management is leveraging the frontline people's psychology. So less abstract, I'll give you a specific example. Let's say I'm a nurse, I'm carrying 15 patients, and then it's cheaper to get rid of a nursing assistant. And so We just don't schedule them, and then you have extra duties that you need to do. And let's say, a patient has an alarm go off, and so you have to drop everything and attend to that. Well, more work, less staff, it's a pretty easy equation. You end up working longer. And so a 12-hour shift becomes a 14-hour shift. And, you had to be awake before and after that. So now we're looking maybe a 16, 17-hour day. That's not sustainable. And when there's pushback from the front line, hey, I need some help. Hey, I can't keep doing this. Hey, this is an unsafe environment. And management is going to look out for itself more so than its individual workers. So if you do make a mistake because you're tired or not thinking or multitasking, the company's going to protect the company. They're not going to protect you to a certain point. So that individual situation of where you have one strata of people who are trying to provide care and another strata of people who are impeding that care by trying to save a buck. And when the first group of people say, hey, I need help, and if you don't help me, I'm going to go find someplace else to work, then they're like, okay, well, I thought you really cared for your patients. I thought you had this caritas, and maybe I misjudged you. And so there's that psychological dynamic of almost being in an abusive relationship, where they gaslight you or manipulate the variables to their benefit as opposed to what's reality. And having that very specific issue, to me, is my trauma-informed approach to reconciling the re-entry turbulence of a near-death experience, of any of the exceptional human experiences. And how do you reconcile that? Because you see the potential of what humanity can be, and then you see what we are. You're like, holy shit, how did this get this far? And I think part of it has to do with multiple distractions. Cell phone, internet. Before that, it's all the isms. Well, the isms are still there. Religion, politics, class warfare, race politics. If you have been on the internet, you know that it's almost like a combination of an amusement park and a crack house, in that there are so many rides to choose from. If you want to be a fundamentalist in some things, go ride that ride. If you want to, be any kind of personality, jock, sporto, nerd, fashionista, whatever role you want to try, again, it's the amusement park. Get on the ride, and maybe you like the ride, maybe it makes you puke and you don't go back and do it again. But I can't help but think that this distraction, this pitting of one group against another, has been going on for a very, very long time. Centuries, at least. And maybe even millennia. And to me, it begs the question, where's the hidden hand? Because I believe human nature, if left to its own devices, does kind of find its way towards the center. I believe a lot of fundamentalist thinking, both to the left and to the right, can be attributed to falling into an echo chamber, or maybe finding yourself in one and not realizing it's an echo chamber, and just having these beliefs. Maybe you're just exploring the beliefs, but once the algorithm finds out what you're looking at, then that's all it feeds you. And a lot of people aren't wise enough to create a couple of profiles on the internet. One that maybe is more liberal, one that is maybe more conservative. Or I don't know if people are interested to see what the counter programming is. And so, you know, I lean a certain direction, but I'm also looking at other websites to see what's being discussed and what the programming happens to be, and programming in a bunch of different ways. But again, at a higher level, I think that a lot of people, and especially those who have had the exceptional human experiences, have that cognitive dissonance between what is possible and what we're being given. And then the question is do you want that to be the case? Do you just want to take what's being given? Or do you want to participate in the journey, in the amusement park ride that is challenge the status quo? I was kind of sort of raised by my grandfather, who was born in 1900. And from the time I was maybe 3 years old until I was 7, I was with my grandpa during my waking hours. And maybe that influenced some of my kind of maybe old school thinking. More of a centrist, maybe more of a, politically, I guess if I had to pull something out, I would say an independent. Because stupidity knows no bounds when it comes to race, education, political, yada yada. So it doesn't pass the sniff test, then it's like, yeah, I'm not going to ride that ride. But I think it is a ride we all ride to a certain degree. And I also think those people who have the exceptional human experience, they've energetically or psychically or emotionally have a knowledge of what potential we have. And it's like the greater the dissonance, the greater the difference, the greater the dissonance. And I think that's what a lot of near-death experiencers and the EHE, exceptional human experiencers, encounter. Now, with all that being said, I think that everyone could benefit from speaking to someone who has worked through those episodes. It's been 15, 25, it's been 19 years since my near-death experience. And it was 7 to 9 years before I finally kind of figured out how to fold that experience into the rest of my life journey. But that doesn't mean I found a solution. And I don't think one can find a solution. And that may be my own cynicism coming through, but I've never met a guru. I've never met a New York Times bestseller. I've never met a personality that wasn't just like the rest of us. They've got bad days, and they are, wrestling with some sort of a mental health issue, whether that's, episodic or chronic. We all have gas. We all have bad breath in the morning. We're all friggin' human. And anybody who tries to perpetuate an image that is different from that is someone I personally would be very dubious of. I got in trouble in college for a lot of things, but this one particular item was I had just read a book called Memnoch the Devil, Anne Rice book. And in there, Memnoch was challenging the Jesus narrative. And for me, it was like a lot of the, well, so it calls to mind one of the shows on TV where it's like the Secret Millionaire or something like that. But it's where the owner of a company disguises themselves as somebody else and goes out amongst the people to see, what the reality is, as opposed to what's being polished and fed to them. And that does have some very powerful ramifications when it's done correctly. But the argument that I had in my religion class in college, and I still have to this day through these TV shows, there is a big difference between being poor and pretending to be poor. And that's why I challenged the Jesus narrative when I was at a Catholic college, in that Jesus is on a pedestal that's too tall for him. And that got a lot of people's attention. And the professor, was like, well, expand upon that, thankfully. And I said, he's always been the Son of God. He always knows he's always got credit. He's always got a backup. He's always got a safety net. There's no risk. He can be whatever he wants to be because he knows he's got backup. I would take a lot more risks. If I had, $20, $50 million in the bank, I would be doing some crazy ass shit. I'd be trying things that, good and bad. The rest of us don't have that. We don't know that we're still connected to Source. We don't know that we have that backup. And if we look at our checking accounts, we can't make some wild ass guesses and decisions and try things. And I think that the overarching thing is that is deliberate. Again, by that hidden hand, is that if we don't allow for them to explore, and we don't allow for them to fully sample what the human experience is, then it kind of goes back to what George Carlin was saying, is that they don't want an independent and free-thinking populace. They want people dumb. They want them just smart enough to push a button or push a paper. I think we're there. Having graduated from high school in '85, graduated from college the first time in '91, I have seen, as an educator and a trainer, the steady, slow decline of critical thinking and independent thought. I think we need to challenge that. And again, that gets back to it's a sliver of that picture of, if you've had an exceptional human experience, you know our potential. And if you don't explore that on your own, you're missing out. If you don't somehow contribute to facilitating others to start asking questions and to explore the potential of their lives and the human experience, they're missing out too. And so here I sit here about 4:30 in the morning, and I think I want to keep it under 30 minutes. But I just wanted to share that trauma-informed is not necessarily someone you should bank in. Have conversations with them and see where they're at. Sometimes you need a clinical professional. Sometimes you need someone who's just been through the shit and been through the trenches and can show you where the sharp spots and the wet parts are that to stay away from. But that's my contribution for today. If you guys have any questions or want to expand on that, or would like to, if you're having some problems with trying to decide which path to take, or you're trying to kind of wrap yourself into an exceptional human experience you've had, give me a shout. I'm really good at playing air traffic control. If I can't help you based upon my own experiences and background, I've got connections and I can direct you to either that person or that book that I think might be helpful. All right. Have a great day out there. Bye.